History remembers battles by numbers, but some armies were destroyed long before the first shot was fired. Inside a silent war room, pride quietly replaced strategy while nobody dared to challenge authority. The commanders looked calm, but beneath their composed faces, fear was already entering the room. Maps covered the table like promises of victory, yet every warning report pointed toward disaster. No explosions were heard that night. Only the dangerous confidence of men who believed they could not fail. One officer tried to speak carefully, but hesitation inside powerful rooms often sounds like weakness. The commander listened in silence, and that silence became more terrifying than anger itself. Every man in the room understood the truth. But truth becomes fragile when pride controls leadership. Outside the headquarters, thousands of soldiers waited for orders that would decide their fate forever. And within a single decision, an entire army began marching toward collapse without realizing it. War does not only test weapons, it tests whether leaders can separate confidence from arrogance. The commander at the center of this crisis had spent years building a reputation no one dared question. Victory after victory transformed him from a strategist into a symbol of absolute certainty. But once leaders become symbols, criticism slowly starts disappearing from the room around them. Intelligence officers noticed the first signs of danger hidden inside logistics and supply reports. The weather was worsening, communication routes were fragile, and the enemy remained underestimated. None of the warnings sounded dramatic alone, yet together they painted the shape of catastrophe. Still, the commander believed speed and momentum would overpower every growing risk ahead. Officers began softening their concerns because disagreement no longer felt professionally safe. Inside the command room, silence slowly became more valuable than honesty. Every briefing slowly transformed into a performance where officers repeated confidence instead of questioning reality. The commander no longer demanded loyalty directly, because fear itself had already disciplined the room. A single raised eyebrow from leadership became enough to silence even experienced military advisors. Reports describing enemy resistance were minimized before they ever reached the center of command. Young officers privately discussed danger in corridors, yet none dared repeat those concerns publicly. The deeper the operation advanced, the more difficult it became for anyone to recommend retreat. Confidence spread through headquarters like weather, shaping decisions before facts could even be examined. Every small success was celebrated loudly, while every warning was quietly pushed aside. The commander believed hesitation would destroy morale faster than any enemy attack ever could. Slowly, the army stopped adapting to reality and began adapting to the emotions of leadership. One intelligence officer studied the maps repeatedly, already sensing the operation was becoming unstable. Supply routes stretched dangerously across hostile terrain, while communication delays grew worse each day. Exhausted soldiers continued moving forward because nobody above them wanted to admit uncertainty. The atmosphere inside headquarters became colder, with every unanswered concern left hanging in silence. Officers learned to carefully edit their words before speaking inside strategic meetings. Strategic caution slowly became associated with weakness instead of wisdom. Some men in the room still believed disaster could be avoided if someone spoke honestly enough. Others already understood the terrifying truth that authority no longer wanted honesty at all. Late at night, the commander remained alone beside the maps, silently studying reports he publicly dismissed. Somewhere beneath his confidence, doubt had already begun quietly growing in the shadows. Every passing hour pushed the army deeper into a situation that no longer matched the original strategy. The commander continued speaking about momentum because stopping now felt emotionally impossible to him. Admitting mistakes would damage the powerful image he had spent years carefully building. Inside military systems, pride often survives longer than logic itself. Officers who once admired the commander now avoided direct eye contact during briefings. Nobody wanted responsibility for challenging authority at the exact moment pressure was increasing. Fear moved silently through headquarters like smoke filling a locked room. Some officers convinced themselves the commander must still possess hidden knowledge they could not see. Others remained silent simply because silence felt safer than humiliation. The operation continued forward even as reality quietly began collapsing underneath it. A senior strategist finally gathered enough courage to question the advance during a late-night meeting. He spoke carefully about unstable supply lines and the growing danger surrounding the army. The room became completely silent before the commander even answered him. Nobody interrupted because everyone understood how dangerous disagreement had become. The commander walked slowly toward the strategy table without showing visible emotion. He reminded the officers that wars were won by decisive action, not hesitation. His words sounded inspiring, yet they quietly transformed caution into betrayal. The strategist hesitated for only a second, but that hesitation changed the atmosphere immediately. In rooms controlled by authority, even small moments of uncertainty can destroy credibility. And with that silence hanging in the air, the final phase of the disaster quietly began. The latest intelligence reports arrived just before midnight, carrying warnings that could no longer be ignored. Enemy resistance was strengthening faster than expected, while communication networks were beginning to fail. Several officers believed the army needed immediate repositioning before the situation became irreversible, yet no one wanted to openly recommend stopping the operation in front of the commander. The emotional pressure inside the room had become stronger than the strategic discussion itself. Finally, one officer cautiously suggested a temporary pause to stabilize the advancing forces, and the suggestion sounded reasonable, but inside that room it felt almost rebellious. The commander removed his gloves slowly and placed them beside the battlefield map in silence. Every officer watched carefully, understanding that the next words could decide thousands of lives. The commander asked a single question that instantly changed the entire discussion. "Do you believe the men are incapable?" he asked without raising his voice. The question transformed strategic caution into a test of loyalty and courage. Suddenly, supporting delay sounded emotionally similar to doubting the soldiers themselves. The officers understood the trap immediately, and silence returned to the room once again. The commander began speaking about greatness, momentum, and the dangers of hesitation during war. His confidence filled the room even while reality outside continued becoming more dangerous by the hour. Then came the irreversible order that would define the fate of the entire army. The advance would continue immediately with no pause, no retreat, and no reconsideration. Several officers lowered their eyes quietly, already sensing the cost of what had just happened, and somewhere beyond the command room walls, thousands of soldiers unknowingly marched closer toward catastrophe. Orders spread rapidly through communication lines while exhausted troops prepared to move once again. Vehicles rolled forward into worsening conditions that leadership had repeatedly underestimated. Inside headquarters, silence replaced confidence as officers privately struggled with growing fear. No one celebrated the decision because deep down many already sensed the operation was failing. The commander remained behind after the meeting, standing alone beside the maps in heavy silence. Perhaps part of him already understood the truth he could no longer publicly admit. By morning, fragmented battlefield reports began revealing the first signs of collapse. Entire units stopped responding while communication officers searched desperately for missing signals. Conflicting updates spread confusion throughout headquarters faster than anyone could organize a response. The carefully planned operation was beginning to break apart under the weight of reality. Supply routes failed one after another as exhausted soldiers struggled to survive worsening conditions. Officers worked without sleep, desperately trying to rebuild order from scattered information. Every new report confirmed the warnings that had once been dismissed inside the command room. The disaster was no longer approaching. It had already begun unfolding in real time. Some commanders still tried speaking confidently even while panic quietly spread behind closed doors. Others stared silently at the maps, realizing they had mistaken arrogance for strength. The myth surrounding the commander began collapsing alongside the operation itself. Subordinates who once echoed his certainty now avoided speaking unless absolutely necessary. Fear was no longer hidden beneath discipline, because reality had finally become impossible to ignore. And across the battlefield, soldiers paid the price for decisions made far away from the front lines. Young men froze in isolated positions while retreat routes disappeared faster than expected. Entire formations became stranded because earlier warnings about logistics had been ignored. Inside headquarters, exhaustion slowly transformed into guilt and quiet realization. Officers remembered every meeting where honesty had been sacrificed to protect authority. The commander spoke less now, spending long hours staring silently at casualty reports. His confidence had not defeated reality, it had only delayed the moment of collapse. The final evacuation discussions happened in near silence without speeches or declarations of certainty. Weeks earlier, caution sounded cowardly, but now survival itself had become the objective. The disaster no longer felt unavoidable because everyone remembered the moments when it could have been stopped. One decision after another had slowly pushed the army toward destruction long before the battlefield confirmed it. The true collapse was not only military, it was psychological, emotional, and deeply human. Fear of challenging authority had become more dangerous than the enemy waiting outside. History often blames defeat on tactics, weather, or numbers, but pride can be deadlier than all of them. Powerful leaders sometimes continue failing strategies simply because admitting error feels unbearable. And when institutions reward obedience more than honesty, catastrophe becomes only a matter of time. The silence inside that command room eventually echoed across an entire battlefield. Thousands suffered because nobody found the courage to stop a fatal decision at the right moment. Even today, history continues repeating this pattern wherever ego replaces clear judgment. The most dangerous words in leadership are often spoken calmly. We cannot turn back now. Because sometimes the greatest act of strength is not advancing forward, but admitting the path ahead leads to disaster.